Martin back in the room, and we're going to do some Q&A.
Hi everyone. Just a quick plug before we do the questions. Simone talked about how she can't read her handwriting anymore. She wants to try writing with Parkinson fingers. I've got a completely illegible sheet of paper here with questions from viewers. It does give me the opportunity just to mention that this conference supports Parkinson's UK as its chosen charity this year, for which I'm very grateful, having received enormous amounts of support from the guys at Parkinson's UK. If you are enjoying the conference and have a spare shilling or two, please, there are links on the website to the Parkinson's UK donation page. And if you really want to make a bit of effort and improve the quality of life in honest living, just look at me, find me on social media, and you'll find a link to my wife's fundraising page, because she's running the London Marathon 3 days after her 60th birthday in age of Parkinson's, and she'd love you to support her. Thank you very much. In terms of questions, observation really from the guys online. We heard a first-class presentation there from Mr. Howard. Sorry, David. When? About customer experience, and he said, forget about the PPM, forget about the energy management, thinking about the colleague experience. And then we heard a whole bunch of really good technology presentations that didn't mention the colleague experience once. All of it, we need to bring this lot together. We need to be selling when we talk about energy and all that stuff, and the new technology that you guys are pitching so well the use of. We need to bring in that building user experience. Be interested in any observations from the panel about how we bring those two worlds closer together.
Shall I start, Martin? I think from my point of view, it's bringing the centres of excellence together and recognising that each has a voice and each has a perspective and comes from a good place, and it's about how they're kind of meshed together in a collaborative way. And I think I know that sounds very romantic and lovely, and that's challenging because you've got personalities and you've got people vying for attention in what you normally get in organisations. But if we put the customer, the colleague, at the heart and at the forefront of everything, I think we'll get there. We just need to just mesh it together a bit more. But I think it was a good observation, Martin.
Yeah, I mean, what I would add to that is just, with the employee experience or colleague experience at the centre, we'll just make sure then that your performance metrics mirror that. So whether you're talking about energy or waste or food or cleaning, etc., how does it come back to employee, and what are you measuring concretely that would add value for that consumer?
Anybody got anything to add? Anybody disagree? Must be somebody that disagrees.
This has been really insightful for me today, and I think I've been biting my tongue a lot from the earlier sessions, but I feel like we're not really talking about that experience enough. I mean, we're talking about meshing things together, we're talking about the tech that's available and how it supports people, but we're not talking about how we're stress testing that. I've seen the word accessibility come up a couple of times, but it's not ever mentioned in the sense of the person who's actually using the building, or a client, or a customer who's using the building. We're also not talking about the digital side of things and how accessible that is to people like myself who have a disability. I'm really worried that we are allowing our systemic challenges from the built environment to shift into the digital environment because we're thinking of accessibility as a afterthought and not from the beginning. So I think it would be great to understand how we're going to bridge that gap.
Yeah, great question. Anybody with any observations on the panel?
I think it's a really good observation. I think there is a huge challenge in deploying technology in an accessible way. something that we struggle with as an organisation. So we put in external help, do Hassel Group, to try and help us design our platforms so they become accessible for different users. But there's a lot for the industry to do, because you're right, we're going to take that physical challenge in buildings and move it straight into the digital environment, because not everything's properly thought through. So there's no immediate answer other than it is something that needs a lot more focus, and I think the industry is giving it.
Anybody else? Anything to add?
Customer journey mapping, I would say, is another one that you need to have as mandatory, and you can't just pick one type of customer. I would say you've got to force yourself to make sure that you've engaged your community leaders to go right the way through, and to stress test, to use the words you use, before digital technology is finalised and signed off and people walk out the door going, "Oof, did a good job there." It's got to have the customer validation, I would say, as part of the exercise and the project.
Yeah. Me and Louis have had a few conversations about this and building accessibility. I've only known Louis for about less than a year, and we've had some really meaty conversations already. And I think one of the ones is that, you know, we design these buildings and we go, yes, our building's great, but they're designed from a certain point of view. And it is the able-bodied average user of the building, because that's the majority of the people that are going to be using that space. And actually, that importance of the customer journey mapping, see it from different points of view. Anybody else got anything to add to that before we go over to Deborah?
You know, what I'm learning from my journey, that, you know, accessibility doesn't just mean people in wheelchairs. We all have, particularly the neurodiverse, we have so many different needs, and, you know, stairs are better for people with Parkinson's than ramps, because we tend to fall over when we go on ramps. So you put ramps in thinking you're being accessible, actually you're barring our way into the building. So you've really got to be very open and very wide in your thought about, does accessible mean accessible for everybody? Absolutely everybody. Or are you just ticking a box to get past a building reg?
Just picking up on Martin before we go, there are some really good companies out there that really help you in your journey in when you're designing, and also later on in the stage when you're kind of at fit out and things, coming in and doing quality checks and working. And Motion Spot is one that we've used. There are a couple of others. And I was recently listening to an internal conference, and we did one for all our retail garages as well. There was another survey, and it comes from the perspective of people with multiple disabilities. So not, as you said, Martin, not just a wheelchair, visually impaired, so looking at tones and wall tones, carpets, all those sort of things that really kind of make a real difference. And it's a small cost, but God, it has such an impact on the organisation culturally as well as for individuals. So I think it's, you know, it fits under one of our strategy of care for others, and that's a key part in how we drive. And we have executive sponsorship of this from our executive team, of that it has to happen in every premises. So, you know, it is essential. But I agree with the technology bit, because I sit there and go, yeah, well, we've got Grammarly, we've got this, we've got that. But actually, all the technology we've talked about today, and arming our kind of professionals within our industry, how does it associate with that? How do you connect with that? Because it feels that it's more generic at the moment than specific. So I think it's a really valid point for our industry faces of how do we cross that divide. So, well made.
It was more college about the experience in totality. And that's really the sexy thing about FM, is that it's all experience. It can be good or it can be bad. And we as leaders in this industry get to decide. And it's like a business plan. If we don't have a holistic, encompassing version or mission statement about what that experience should be, then nobody knows exactly how to fit into that. So first, having that culture, which I believe strongly in, the culture of experience, and then understanding how your piece of the pie fits into adding that overall experience for the people who we interact with every day. 70% of our life is spent in work-related activity. So if it's not a good experience, your life sucks.
Totally with you. Can't disagree with anything there. Anybody else? We got a question at the back. Can't see who it is because the lights are blinding me.
Asset maintenance and SFG20. So it's more from a client perspective. I have a client that has both BMS integration and SFG20 is SFG20 compliant. It has the integration. So my question is, going back to what you said, for some of the yellow and green codes recommended by the SFG20, it could nowadays be replaced by a BMS system integration where the real value can be captured as to how much an asset is being used, and then accordingly the maintenance doesn't need to be planned. It can be preventative and also reactive as opposed to planned and reactive. So I guess my question is, in terms of SFG20, is if it's following, do you only then need it really for legislation and the red code, but you can use the BMS system integration for the yellow and green, which is best practice, and then also when you include AI element, which is coming maybe in the future, when you include that as well, then how does SFG20 fall with that best practice and that data, as opposed to
Okay, well, yeah, thanks for the question. I think you actually summed it up a lot better than I did when I did my presentation. I think where we're trying to get to with SFG20 is to make sure that we don't preclude any of the new technologies that are available from being part of the standard. And when you're deploying that standard to your organisation, it's key you look at the operational risk as well as just the legislation, because like I said, like I mentioned, keeping for like a university at the moment, universities are very keen on air quality, making sure you've got the best experience and you're not falling asleep in a room like this, and that helps when they're paid by attendance and exam performance. And so when we're talking about providing that augmented solution, we'd be developing the SFG20 standards so that it allows for things to be replaced by those metrics. Not all those metrics will be available in every BMS, and a lot of BMSs are still fairly, unfortunately, unattainable, and I think that's where a lot of the individual sensor providers have really taken advantage of that opportunity in the market, and there's so many of them. But what we're looking for is, as we progress the standard, to enable that to be a possibility for industry.
Probably got time for one more question.
I have one from the guys here online.
Great.
To the service works guys, you started by talking about the 96% of buildings that aren't new, the existing estate that we're all struggling with, and then you demonstrated some fabulous technology that had some of the guys online here drooling with how they'd love to get hold of that. Is it? I suppose first question is it scalable in terms of addressing that 96% question? And secondly, why is the Nordic market appear to be ahead? What is it why are we slow in the UK, or are we just cheap?
I will see if I can answer the question. The first person, the 96%, of course, that will increase during the year. There will be more and more new buildings, so the average, the variance between those two will of course increase. So the more connected buildings will be 10% and 15% during the year. So the gap will really decrease, of course. Why, if UK is behind or not, there was not me to say, but it has been. There has been the digitization journey for real estate owners. They own the building for schools, for healthcare organizations, or governmental buildings. They have a big property portfolio that they have to maintain. We have customers that have 4 or 5 million square meters to maintain and operate, and they have to keep track on all of their assets that they have. So this has been a driving force that they can digitize that and keep track on everything, all the assets. So I think that has been the main thing. Also, they have really big real estate owners that take care of the building from the beginning, from a long period of time. So that has been the driving part in between, and have been there for 10 years with that.
All good from you, Martin?
Okay, thanks. Back to you, Simone.
Thanks. Back to the studio.